All right, let's get some more people in here. Just gonna send the invite link to a couple of places. Hey, there's Orion. Hello. How you doing?
Good, good. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Just reminding people right now that this is happening.
Yeah, yeah,
So
fair.
I'm just gonna drop it into the Wolf Games channel. ADD live training is starting now.
Nice.
Ta-da.
Hey, Ian's in. Hey, Ian.
Hey,
There we go. And let's just drop it here as well. I'm just sharing out the link here. Try to get people in. All right. So, um, today I want to I think the last few sessions we've gone over a bunch of theory and stuff. Today I want to do like all work. So,
Big fan.
um, we're just gonna live code today and build out features and answer questions and so on. That sound like fun?
Yeah,
sure.
no, that sounds awesome, dude.
Okay, so I'm gonna actually share my real process with you guys, and a lot of it is just setting up context for the AI, right? Um, so a lot of I used to go do a lot of um, a lot of coding and back and forth and vibe coding and stuff. Um, these days, I do still do that, by the way. I still do like a lot of conversation driven kinds of vibe coding things as I'm prototyping something. But once I have a fairly good idea of what it is I'm building, I'm mainly just establishing context for the AI. And establishing context is basically just giving it a list of requirements and so on, right? Um, Now we have a discover command to help you dig out those requirements, but once we've discovered what it is we're building, at that point we can jump in and actually like um, just kind of give the AI enough detailed requirements that it can run with it and start implementing. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm actually going to build a new feature for the AIDD framework that we need um, while we're recording and answering questions and so on. So
What
let
what
me
feature
share.
is that going to be, Eric?
This is I'm actually going to do the a second pass at the npx AIDD create command. Um, I've done a previous pass on it to just kind of establish, all right, here's the base framework for the common case, which is a Next.js app. But, we've got other customers who don't use Next.js and some who don't even use JavaScript. So, so what we're doing is creating we're just going to live code and create the create command in the AIDD framework. And you'll get to see my real process working on a real project. And of course, the AIDD framework is already used in production by hundreds of teams, and it's a big deal. So we got to get it right. So you're going to see both the process of just kind of fleshing out what it is we're trying to build and give the AI enough context to do a good job, and also the process of like, all right, how do we quality review this thing and make sure it's staying on track and doing the right thing? So you're going to see me prompting the AI a little bit more than you'll have to prompt it in the future because we're doing a skills conversion and we're auto indexing the skills. So it's going to discover a lot of these things a lot better in the near future. But for now, um, I'm gonna do a little more prompting than you will actually need to do in your real projects. So let me share my screen here. I'm gonna turn some stuff off first. Uh, Here. Just gonna turn off my little password autofill thing. Oops, that's not it. I'm gonna go to manage extensions, turn it off. There we go. Because that pops up stuff in our input windows that is just gonna clutter things. All right, here we go. So, just to recap, because we got a couple of late joiners, um, what we're gonna build today is we're actually gonna show live coding in action, how I actually build stuff with the AIDD framework. And the thing that we're building is the npx AIDD create command. And we're going to use this as the basis for, our create game command and a bunch of other stuff that's coming. Um, but basically, um, the problem that we're solving right now is currently the AIDD framework is a little too tech stack centric for JavaScript and the web, which is not a problem. You just prompt the AI and say, here's my stack that I'm actually building on. And it just ignores the JavaScript stuff and does the right thing most of the time. But we're going to create scaffolds that will be able to, you'll be able to run to quickly bring up to speed a brand new repo on whatever stack you want. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to come up with like, here's how we're gonna create like a manifest kind of inspired by like the GitHub Actions YAML files and stuff like that. So we're gonna create like a manifest that the AI can run through to set up a new project scaffold and install all the dependencies and make sure you're all set to go. Now, um, this is a little bit different from a lot of scaffold solutions that tend to be very template based. And it's different because we want these scaffolds to like automatically track the latest changes and security updates and stuff like that. So we're going to install all of our components um, basically as latest by default. And of course, the user should be able to override these kinds of decisions, and they will be able to by creating their own custom manifest for their scaffold. Um, but the default case is we just want to install everything fresh and make a brand new scaffold every time we create something. And that's hopefully going to keep things a little bit cleaner and make sure that everybody who's using the scaffold is getting to take advantage of the latest updates to their, underlying tech stack. So let's share my screen and just start digging in and have fun with that. Right. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or use the chat. And remember, this is being recorded. It is going to be posted on my YouTube channel. So if you don't want to appear in the recordings, you can use the chat instead of unmuting yourself and showing your camera and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, keep that in mind. Okay. So share. I'm going to choose the Brave browser here, share this, and I'm going to close these other things that I don't need real quick. All right. So you'll notice that I've pulled up Claude code here. And that's because actually this is not Claude code. This is Claude code. There we go. And that's because we're gonna be working on in Claude code here to do the actual implementation stuff. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the AIDD repository, right? Default cloud is fine, probably. Um, oh, they changed the UI here. Um, where's the prompt? How do I get started on this? Maybe I can just do this instead over here. All right. So in another tab, I've created here, if we go to github.com parallel drive AIDD, we're going to find an issue here under issues. Actually, it looks like I haven't actually committed that issue yet. All right, so I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna create the new issue real quick. Um, 1 second. Live vibes, fun. Okay, we'll use YAML dependencies manifest for the initial setup, inspired by GitHub Actions YAML files. Okay, so I'm going to create this. You can't see, but over in another tab, I was creating the issue that we're going to use. There we go. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to use this as the basis for a prompt, right? So we are going to share the issue number with Claude. We're going to say um, npx aidd create issue number 95. Okay, please use the task command to create a task epic to track this work. Um, so with Claude, since it doesn't, we're not using skills yet. We're still making that agent skills conversion. So I tend to give it a little hint about where to find things and to follow the instructions. So I explicitly tell it to follow the instructions and tell it where to find them. So C AI commands task and carefully follow the instructions there to create the task epic. All right. And then over here, I'm just gonna um, edit. Yeah, I'll just copy and paste this. So we'll need to flesh out. I made a start. I've made a start here, but we'll need to flesh it out. Let's discuss before you get started, right? Before you start editing files. So there's a plan mode that you can use in Claude Code. Um, and you can just trigger that with the plan feature like that, I believe, and get started here and it'll pop it open in here. Oh, and I should make sure I'm in the right context. I can't even tell because it's recording. Oh well. Yeah, probably. Okay. So right now it's the AI agent is basically using the scaffold that comes with Claude Code to kind of pull up relevant information. And as it does, it discovers our framework. So you can see it's discovered our command system and some other context here that's paying attention to. You can see it's found related. Um, this is related to what we're going to be building. This is where the npx aidd create command actually is going to live. So it's finding the relevant context. It's doing a good job. All right. AI scaffolds, no files found. So it's figured out, hey, we're going to have to create this. Oop, show 20 more. All right. Let's see what we got here. Good. I've now read task creator, the please.mdc. which sets up, some general constraints and also gives it access to the depth command, the RTC command. So it can think very carefully through this. And now it's doing that. So it's restating npx aidd create app type as a new subcommand that scaffolds apps using a manifest-driven extension system running fresh latest installs rather than static templates. Key observations. Create as a new subcommand on the existing AIDD CLI. The extension is defined by three artifacts living at a URI, readme.md, scaffold manifest.yaml, and the bin extension.js. There's a default extension at scaffolds next chadcn, alias des next app. URIs can come from positional arg or an environment variable or default. Before I draft the epic, I have a few questions. URI format, what format are extension URIs? So they're usually going to be GitHub URLs, HTTP URLs, but they could probably be any of the above. So let's answer the question. Let's just start with HTTP URLs. Um, Start with HTTP URLs for the MVP. And yeah, that's good enough. Scaffold manifest. You mentioned it's inspired by GitHub Actions YAML. Can you sketch what fields it would have? For example, next shadcn description steps. Um, to your example for number two, or your example manifest here looks like a perfect start. Let's run with that for now. Okay. Three. Does it define dependencies plus an AI prompt separately? No, I think let's run with that for now. Um, but assume that um, there is a new um, key um, as an alternative to run. Um, let's call it prompt. Prompt, and it should invoke a sub agent inside an agent framework, such as Claude Code, um, Claude Code, or Open Code CLIs, right? And we have done that before. And when I say we, I mean Ian, right? Um, and that has worked. Ian, do you have any learnings I should be aware of when we're trying to implement this?
So the open code CLI streams JSON responses. That's something that I had to um, work around. Um,
Hmm.
so Claude Code and Cursor will provide a JSON response.
Okay. Would you
Open code
recommend that I
streams.
just pick Claude Code for now to get
Yeah, I would
started and
keep
then
it.
add the others
Yeah,
later?
yeah,
Okay.
because I don't know if that's going to affect you now, but it would add probably a lot of time to something
Start
like
with
that.
Claude Code CLI only for now. Um, but keep in mind, uh, we will make this configurable later. So how do you handle the configuration in Rightway? We should probably do the same thing here.
Well, that's uh, being refactored at the moment, but right now there is it basically checks to see which agent you choose, and it will use a parsing function for the agent output. But you could um, I can share that abstraction with you. But right now, like I said, that PR is kind of being
Yeah. So
reconstructed.
there's
So
no, you don't have a good what do we call it? The agent framework, or what do we call that thing that we're selecting?
So it's the agent config. So in the agent config, it has a
Agent
part
config.
which is basically a no-op for cursor and Claude currently, and then there's parse indie JSON for the stream.
Okay.
Um, so that's how it's currently being handled. But like I said, that might change when it gets resubmitted, hopefully.
All right. So, for those of you following along, what we're talking about is the ability to spawn sub agents that already have all the capabilities and agent context of things like Claude Code and Cursor and things like that. So, basically, you can take advantage of the built-in capabilities of tool calling and all the skills and things that they have access to just by invoking that sub agent through their CLIs, right? Through Claude Code or um, or open code or cursor CLI or whatever you happen to be using. So let's
Yeah, I shared
see.
a link to how it currently is in the work in progress PR. So if you want
All
to
right,
take a
we'll
glance
make
at
it
it, but
configurable later. Um, let's use an env variable called or you don't use an env variable, right? You've got like a maybe a configuration thing for it.
right, there's a CLI option, so you can do dash dash agent and select cursor open code Claude, and it will automatically use default config, or you can pass in a config
Let's
using a JSON
use
file.
dash dash agent and um, and select. Did you just have Claude like that?
So Claude is the default. If you don't use the that flag at all, it will use Claude by default. But you could do, yeah, dash dash agent space Claude or cursor or open code.
Yeah. And then you have the agent config um uh what's it called? The
Yeah, they're
the
default.
schema,
They're
a
default.
schema for
Yes,
agent
yeah,
config.
there's schemas and defaults for the each config, but you can also pass in a custom one via JSON file. I can read that because it's a
Okay.
config object. So
All right. So that's a config object. I want to give it the shape of that config object here in the context so that we can um, share that same config across both things, but I'll probably, yeah, yeah. Um, Maybe what we can do is just get started like this and then refactor it to use yours later because I don't want to disrupt the live stream to go and track it down. All
yeah,
right.
that's fair. And like I said, I might end up refactoring that anyway because I'm
Yeah.
not so sure it's the
Yeah,
greatest experience yet. But
we'll figure out the right shape and
yeah,
then we'll add it later.
totally.
Yeah. Okay. So three discuss define dependencies. Okay. Bin extension execution. What is the API contract? Does it receive target directory as an arg? Does it get called before, after manifest steps? Um, it should get called after after, right? Um, three, yes, this is a security concern because we are executing remote code. Um, so the user must trust the source, and we should warn um, that this is the case. However, I don't see a good way around this. Right? We just, we're running an installer, and the installer is going to invoke code. So I don't think there's a way to like do this without doing that. We can, but like then it'll severely impair what you can do in your scaffold, right? I want you to be able to do just about anything you want with your scaffold and run arbitrary code um, and inject like arbitrary prompts and say, hey, this is how I want this thing to work, and tell the AI what to do, right? And if you don't trust the it's just like installing any piece of software. If you don't trust them, don't install it. You know? Um, but yeah, so I think we're gonna have to just use trust and reputation there. I don't think there's a way to fix that. Um, yeah. So YOLO. Um, the AI scaffolds next ShadCNs should creating that default scaffold to actual README blah be in scope for this epic, or is that separate epic? Um, for I think we need something, right? Something to run our E to E tests. Um, but it doesn't need to be fancy. Um, that will be our default eventually, but maybe we can create, well, actually, no, it doesn't need, actually, yeah. Let's say most, most of our projects will use, um, the same dependencies, um, for things like Rightway, Rightway, Vitest. Um, what else is in there that's pretty common? Playwright, etc. But maybe we can make a scaled back test version, scaled back test version, um, that does not do the full next shadcn install, right? Um, maybe call it scaffold test. Scaffold example. Um, in the same scaffolds folder. Start with that. Um, make the shadcn one, a stub for now, right? Um, scaffold example in the same scaffolds folder. It should install, the test frameworks. And what else should it install? Probably CUID2, CUID2. Yep, because just about everything's going to need those test frameworks and CUID2 to generate IDs. I've never built an app that didn't need to generate IDs before. Right. So start with that. Also CUID2. How about error causes and CUID2? Because most apps are going to need to throw errors once in a while or handle thrown errors once in a while. All right, download and read. When pulling from an extension URI, does download mean fetching the individual files via HTTP, git clone, npm install? No, not git clone. Um, not npm install because we're building a new scaffold, right? Um, download in this context. So it should behave a bit like, create next app, right? npx create next app um, name, where it creates a new folder called name, right? Right. And installs things there. So think of it more like um, we're not going to git clone the repo because that I think that would require you to maintain the versions in that repo, right? Rather than just keeping the manifest and saying like everything's going to install at latest by default and so on. So I don't want to just git clone the remote, right? What do you guys think? All right. Okay. So we set up a bunch of contacts and then we just kind of go back, kind of let it rip a little bit. Any questions or comments so far? One thing that I think is worth noting is that, I'm still doing quite a bit of work here, but the work has shifted from actually implementing to like making sure that we've got a good specification, right? Orion.
Hey, are we gonna be able to make like a game sample after this session or after this is done? Like to test it out?
The create game
Yeah,
scaffold. Yeah, so I'm doing this generic thing first, and then we're gonna start building the game scaffold. Right.
cool, cool. Hell yeah.
So that's like the next step. Um, however, oh my goodness, it looks like we may have some issues with connection here. This is the one bad thing about using Claude Code. The good thing is that everything's online, remote, and everything's done through branches. Like this is already a branch that we can look at, or we should be able to look at as soon as it's pushed to that branch. The bad thing is like sometimes we get connection timeouts and weirdness happening in this UI. So, but this is also my favorite way currently to run a bunch of parallel sessions. Um, but that may change. That might change. We might just like orchestrate a bunch of different things in the cloud and kind of spin up a bunch of like Claude Code's CLI instances in the cloud and control them remotely and stuff. We'll see how that works. Great, clarifies a lot. Before I draft Epic, one remaining question on the command signature. Folder naming, you said it behaves like create next app name. So where does the project folder name come from, given that the positional arg is currently app type? Um, so yes, uh, create next app, create a folder called next app. Oh no. So the requirement also says npx aid create URI pulls from a URI. So can URI be the first positional arg alongside an implicit folder name? Yeah. So really good that it drew that out, but um, yeah, I think we need to ask for the name or do like a dash dash. I don't know. What do you guys think? What would be the best developer experience? Ian, you got an opinion?
Well, I mean, the best developer experience would probably be something that's minimal, but um,
So remember, it's got to be able to take the app type or a URL. Um, and then I think the folder name should come last in the commands in the positional arguments. What do you think? Except two positional arguments is a little confusing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Also, if you need to edit it for some reason, like on the command line, that's kind of a pain too.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but trying to think on the spot is you
How
know,
about um
is
so
there any
folder
convention you could create to for it to infer that from whatever it's
folder naming.
importing?
Yeah, what we could do is we could say um yeah, we stick to the usage npx create sorry, npx AIDD create type, right? But also have um we can have a named argument or do our named argument here. Or not named argument. We could do the folder here, except that that conflicts a little bit because we want to be able to, well, yeah, we don't need to say custom here if it's a URL. Um, that first positional argument can be either a named app type or URI, right? And then the last positional argument will be the folder. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes
This
sense.
implies that the type has to be like it can't use any white space in the type unless you surround it by quotes, right? Um, Stick to the usage and use a library, use the arg parser that we're already using to parse these args. All right. So draft epic structure. Um, Add create commands to AIDD, scaffolds new apps from, yep. So let's give it a couple more constraints, right? Um, Add a create subcommand, commander subcommand with dash dash extension and dash dash agent flags. What's the dash dash extension do? Given extension flag and no, should use the bundled uh, next shad cn's extension. So we don't need a dash dash extension. That can just be the name of the scaffold, right? We don't need dash dash extension because that will be either the name of a scaffold in the scaffolds folder or a custom URI. And we should be able to see the difference between those pretty easily, right? Um, Given create next app should resolve to next cn. Yeah. Given extension URI should use that URI as the extension source. Um, that's going to need to change, but it'll figure that out. Given AID custom extension URI and variable set and no extension flag should use the ANV URI. Given agent name should use the agent CLI for prompt steps. Yep. Cool. Resolve extension source, fetch manifest requirements. Given a local extension path, should use the README and scaffold manifest from disk. Given HTTP URI should fetch. Yeah. Oh, so where we fetch it into, I think is important, right? Given any extension should display the README contents to the user before proceeding. Given a remote Given a remote HTTP URI should warn the user they're about to execute remote code and require confirmation before continuing. And given URI bin extension JS exists, should download it for execution. Yep. Scaffold manifest runner, parse and execute. Cool. Yeah. Given any step fails, should report the error, halt execution. Given bin extension is present, should execute it via node. Yeah. Create scaffold. So, yes, but we need some clarity on a couple of things, right? E to E tests. Great. Some unanswered questions. Where to download the extension files, right? Um, I think it's probably, where do we think it should go? I think we need to use AIDD extensions or prefixes for this. So maybe .aidd, um, and then extension name, right? Um, and we should have a convention in the documentation of this feature. Documentation of this feature. Um, extension names maybe should have create prefixes in the file names, in the files and folder names that get ignored. Um, or how about extension file and folder names, right? Extension folder names should have a create prefix that is not part, yeah, not part of the scaffold name um, that triggers the scaffold this selection, right? E.g., so maybe actually, no, I'll forget about that one. Let's just go with this for now. AIDD extension name. What do you guys think? You like it? All right. So one thing that I want to point out is that it used the task creator um, to plan this, and it has a very simple descriptions and a very simple overview that gives some context. And then it's just basically really simple, readable requirements in the given should format. So, and you can see a name, a little description, and then just requirements. Again, name, little description, and then just requirements. And that keeps the task epic really, really simple. So, another thing that we should probably do is review the task epic and just make sure there's no duplication. Um, all right, good. Updated signature, AIDD create, type URI folder. Type resolution is clean. If it starts with HTTPS, it's URI. Otherwise, it's a named scaffold in AI scaffolds type. The dash dash agent flag stays. Remaining open question, download location you suggested. Well, a couple of things to nail down. Relative to what? Um, no, relative to the current working directory, I think, right? Inside the project feels more natural. Um, yes, kept or cleaned up. Leave the download files in place after scaffolding or delete them when done. Um, so I think we clean it up when it's done installing. What do you guys think? After it successfully finishes, or we can leave that as an exercise for the user. Um, or we can create a cleanup command or something. Um, Today, there's no way to bootstrap a new project from the AID ecosystem. Yeah. All right. Extension resolver, create. Okay. So questions relative to the new folder, right? One, relative to the project root, the new folder project root. Um, Two, I think include a cleanup command. Um, I think would be good, but let users manually invoke it for now, right? Um, Suggest um, after success or on success, suggest to the user that they clean it up if they're happy, right? With the install. Clean it up. How about just clean it up using the command? The cleanup command. Um, I think we need suggestions for that. Scoped to the scaffold. So maybe scaffold cleanup, npx AIDD scaffold cleanup. How's that? Does that look like a good DevX?
Well, I I, I kind of want to see this a little bit more now. I'm trying to switch context and imagine this, and it's a little difficult for me right now because
Yeah.
ideally, I'd want to keep it as simple for whoever's running it as possible, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, whatever's being installed is either going to be used or, cleaned up for them. But I think that's something we can, until I see it, I think this is fine for now. But
Cool.
ideally, I'd like to see it, simplified if possible. But that's just my
Yeah.
current opinion.
By simplified, you mean
It's like automated. Like that's
automate the
like,
cleanup?
yeah, if that's not something the dev really needs to concern themselves with, I'd prefer them not concern themselves with it if possible, right?
Yeah,
But
completely.
that's just based on my current understanding, right? I'm trying to also gain
Yeah,
some.
I'm just kind of trying to imagine like a lot of stuff can go wrong in the installation. So
Mhm.
maybe we can clean up if we have verified success, but otherwise maybe don't
Yeah.
and let the user figure out what went wrong.
hmm Yeah, I think like I said, I think it's worth keeping for now to see how it plays out, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. I think it's a good starting point. Yeah. All right. By the way, is this useful? This like watching Eric work kind of session? Because I noticed the Wolf Games team bailed, so apparently they weren't finding value in the time.
Mhm. Well, I do love seeing your workflow and seeing you go through this, but I do have a difficult time following along without actually seeing it be used or the project like in motion, if that makes sense. If I may not be right using the right words to describe the sentiment, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, having a hard time kind of visualizing the what we're tracking towards.
I mean, I do see that you're creating these tools, but I'm not seeing the tools themselves being used and tested and verified,
Yeah,
or
well,
like,
that's
yeah,
because
seeing their output.
we're still in the planning phase here, right?
Yeah.
So it's creating the epic file, updating the plan, and then it's going to ask for approval before it. starts executing on it. In fact, we're not going to execute it on in the same session, right? Yeah, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, for me, maybe this is along the lines of what Orion's saying is that yeah, there's two different things happening here right now. I am getting value out of seeing how you're prompting using our framework within Claude Code, right? Um,
Hmm.
the second part of it is like trying to, live code with you, which is a completely different concern, right? Like trying to understand the context of what we're building. And that's less relevant to me in terms of learning how to use the framework because I've noticed,
Yeah,
or I struggle sometimes going back and forth between Cursor and Claude. Obviously, Claude takes a lot more hints, right? Like you said, like
a lot more
these are where the
prompting.
files
Yeah,
are. This is where, and it's so it's more tedious and occasionally goes off the rails. Whereas Cursor sometimes seems to do better because it has the rules,
cursor
commands
locks in
better.
a lot
So
better.
it
Yeah,
is helpful for me to see how you're prompting to get good output in the current state of the framework, right? So that is useful.
yeah,
Um, that way I can copy that and hopefully get also better output in my work.
yeah,
So that's where I'm finding value. But I think it is. We're also trying to do a little pair programming, and that's a little harder because of, context switching and whatnot. But
yeah,
long story short, I think I will always get value seeing how you use and invoke the framework to get good results personally.
yeah, yeah. Are you learning anything?
Yeah, I mean, like I think I've been going a little overboard on pointing Claude. Like I've been using like a constraints block,
Hmm.
saying like must adhere to, like plan or I'm not sorry, please.md and TDD and JavaScript, right?
Yeah. Well, you'll
Um,
notice that it pulled those into the context, right?
right, right. Like I said,
It
I've been
found them by itself.
yeah, and I think I was
Right.
doing that because I would notice sometimes it would just completely miss those on certain prompts. So I was trying to make it really explicit every time.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's that's my approach, but it does help to see your because you have more experience doing this, right? So, and it's more succinct. So that would help save me time in the process as well.
Yeah. I tend to avoid over prompting unless I need to, unless I've seen it make the mistake before and I have to, and I feel like I need to. However, like right now we're just in the planning stage, so we're not actually running the TDD process at this stage, right? We're setting up a plan, and it's done a pretty good job of following that
Yeah, totally. I think I've had
process,
less
right?
experience with that because I've received the plans, and sometimes I'll execute my own like remediation plans, but in terms of
Yeah,
creating epics, this is I've more been following them so far than
yeah,
creating
not creating your
one.
own. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll need to get in the. You'll need to like develop that creating epic skill as you like lead projects
Oh yeah,
and
totally. Like I said,
yeah,
I've been doing it for remediation projects for the
yeah,
overall epics, right? So
yeah.
that's where I'm getting that practice.
Nice, good.
But it's a little bit more straightforward, right? Because it's like here are the issues we need. Like I can very easily check those instead of having to really pay attention to the requirements, right?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see.
And actually, I
Okay.
need to run to dinner, so I'm gonna drop off. But
Yeah,
thank you,
we're
podcast.
yeah, I think we're pretty much wrapping up here because this is I think it's stalled. Right? It shouldn't take this long to write a plan file that it's already got like planned out. So I think it's stalled. And we'll probably dive in and execute plans in another session, right? Well, not probably, we'll certainly do that. So anyway, have fun, enjoy your meal, and the rest of you, thank you for attending. Really appreciate it. And hope you're getting some value out of these sessions. So, yeah. All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Lewis, did you learn anything? He gave a thumbs up. He bailed. All right. We'll see you guys later.
So yeah, thanks for hosting.
Bye.